Welcome back to George Curtis and Peg Lautenschlager, a longtime friend, but now she's a competitor.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to blow too much smoke.
I won't move to Madison if I won't move to Oshkosh if you don't move to Madison.
All right,
okay?
that's fair enough. You've always been interested in worker safety, and your firm does a lot of work in that area.
We do a ton of work in the labor law area, and as you mentioned earlier, we've got a rich history at the firm. John Lawton pretty much authored the public employee bargaining laws in the state and was always a well-known labor lawyer, and Dick Cates, of course, a litigator of the status of a George Curtis and others, and always kind of looking out for the public good. So, you cross those two components, and I think you end up with a law firm which has this history of kind of looking out for working people and their rights, and so for me it's a great place to be from that standpoint. I've done a lot of work with labor unions at the national level, and some of the issues that are coming out now with things like private equity buyouts of corporations and how that impacts contracts, existing contracts with workers, that sort of thing. I've worked a lot on worker safety issues and what to do about those in terms of enforcement and ensuring other people don't get hurt on the job, and now workers' compensation and some of those kinds of issues as well. And then, of course, some of the bigger issues that go to workers as consumers, some of the class action things, pharmaceutical companies, whatever. So it's, those are issues that have always impacted me in terms of, I think, being of importance. And those are a lot of issues which would otherwise get swept out under the carpet if we didn't have advocates out there saying, hey, wait a minute, these people deserve some recourse for being treated the way they were.
And Dick Cates, I remember him for lots of reasons. One of the reasons was I saw him argue a case in the Supreme Court, and he came right from the gym with his gym bag, and somewhere he had his notes in there. I remember a classic case there. He was the lead lawyer in the Schwen Hotel case, which was a slip and fall case that in most of our minds expanded the Safe Place statute, which really was a 1911 law that was the first attempt at workers' comp in the world. So that he was a leader in those areas, and even though he made a lot of money in injury cases, he really liked to sink his teeth into a good criminal case. And some of the cases that I heard him argue involved the mental state necessary for that mens rea to be convicted of murder and that sort of thing, that really got the Supreme Court thinking and changing the standard of what kind of criminal intent you need to be responsible for your actions.
It made it a lot tougher for prosecutors like me when guys like you came to court too then.
Absolutely, but what a giant, and so you're with a group that has just pioneered quality representation of people on all levels.
No, and I think that's one of the things that I think those of us who are in this kind of practice, and now I get to include myself with you, George, for a change, it has been really important. We've seen legislators, whether it be in Congress or at the state level or whatever, try to limit ordinary citizens' access to court, and I think it's so important for us to remind ourselves of kind of the historic underpinnings of why we have a court system in the first place, which is, the little guy always had a shot against the king, and that, there was one place where everybody would be treated equally. And I think that, what the kind of practice you've developed here in the Fox Valley, the kind of practice Lawton and Cates has developed in Madison, typifies, I think, at least part of the bar and the Bar Association's commitment to ensuring that everybody has a right to get to court and, as they would say in the day, seek a redress of grievances. Something goes wrong, somebody ought to be able to decide fairly and squarely whether or not you've been harmed, and if so, do you get something for it? And I think the kinds of things you've done, both in terms of your public awareness campaigns, should we call them, and the kinds of things that have been settled in court, whether it be you or Dick Cates or others, are really important, and things which hopefully citizens in the long run will recognize as protecting their rights, not taking them away.
Well, I hope so. I note that you are taking a great deal of joy in your new independence. Previously, when you were DA, a legislator, you were a U.S. attorney or you were an AG, you had to kiss a lot of posteriors, and there were people in a position to jerk your chain. You had to ask the governor for permission to sue as AG.
Yes. I don't know that I ever mastered the art of posterior kissing, George.
No, you didn't.
Maybe that's why I've had so many jobs. But
that could be.
But it's nice to be able to take something to court because you think that that's the fair and just thing to do, and not have to get somebody else's permission to do it.
And it's nice to be able to say, if it doesn't pass the smell test for Peg Lautenschlager, hell no.
Yeah.
Take it to somebody else. I don't want money that bad.
Yeah.
I think we've
exactly
got the
right.
best job in the world in that we can pick and choose. Yeah. Is this worth our time? Is this a just cause?
Yeah.
And I think you're relishing that right now.
I absolutely am enjoying it. No, it's interesting to see because we've got, there's so many cases where you get the little guy. One case we have right now with a young woman who trying to get herself out of poverty, single mom, finally got the job, did whatever, took every last penny of hers to buy an old van, which they promised her had just been fixed up and blah, blah, blah. And within hours of her purchase, the thing exploded and started on fire, and the engine block burned on the ground. To say to this person who turns out to be quite the character and somebody who's been under investigation before, hey, wait a minute, you can't use people like this, has been a lot of fun. And be able to prioritize based on what you think is right, not based on some sort of set of standards someone else has set for you, is very nice as well.
And feel good, and I can tell you do, but we're out of time. Well, that always happens. I think neither one of us knows when to shut up.
Yeah,
but
maybe it's both of us.
Thank you very much,
George.
Come again.
Thank you.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It was great to have Peg back on the show, and nice to see that she hasn't lost any of her enthusiasm for the common person, the health of workers, of pregnant women, of children, the protection of our resources, and just a good, clean fight. I congratulate her on 25 years of public service, and I congratulate her on the kind of work she's doing for one of the outstanding law firms in the state. I wanted to get to another subject with Peg, but the problem is both of us talk too much. That subject is the cost of elections, because you who watch this show have ideas, and you could do something politically that would be very valuable if you could afford the election. And most of you can't, neither can I. So we'll get her back sometime soon, and we'll talk about what we can do regarding election reform. That's my opinion. I'm George Curtis.